Go Patriots! I'm Lee Watts, and this is Patriot Point, your source for Kentucky news from a conservative, Christian, and common sense point of view. Well, this week we're going to be looking at some of the election results and some things that the Republican Party of Kentucky should really learn from this if they want to see more victories. Now, of course, they won 5 out of 6 statewide elected positions, which is a great victory. But of course, that top position, they once again came short of that. So we're going to look at some of the numbers today and some incredibly important lessons that I hope the Republicans of Kentucky will learn. First of all, they need to learn Mitch McConnell's tactic of saying, don't spend your big money until 30 days before the election. You know what? That doesn't work. We saw Andy Beshear was spending money months ahead of time. He got not only his positions out there, but he was really able to craft the public image of Daniel Cameron, leaving Cameron on the defensive this entire time during the campaign. This idea of waiting until you're only 30 days before the election doesn't work. McConnell's plan has failed, and it failed really hard, too. I went and spoke at several different political meetings over the last few months, and we had people who were begging for Cameron signs or anything they could use to pass out, and the campaign wasn't providing that. And we see this idea of waiting to the end does not work. The second thing we need to look at, and this is really important, is some of the numbers. We see here a pie chart. Now, this represents all of the registered voters in Kentucky. Do you realize that only 38% of registered voters actually turned out for this election? You know what that tells me? It tells me that these people were not excited about this candidate. They talked about how Daniel Cameron had the Trump endorsement, but think about this. Trump didn't stop and do any stumping for this guy. I don't think he was necessarily overly excited himself about this. So you only had 38% of registered voters show up. Now, out of that 38%, Andy Beshear got 52% of the 38%, which means in a grand total, only 19% of Kentuckians voted for Andy Beshear. Everybody keep that in mind. There was 81% of Kentuckians who did not vote for Andy Beshear. You only got 19%. That's why it's so incredibly important that we get more massive voter turnout. Now, something else to consider is in all of the other statewide elected positions, the Republicans won by well more than 700,000 votes. Now, this makes us ask a question. How come Kentuckians are going to say, you know what, for the Commissioner of Agriculture, I'm going to vote for the Republican, conservative, pro-life guy. For the treasurer, the conservative, Republican, pro-life. For the auditor, Republican. For the Secretary of State, for the auditor, for every single position, I want to choose the Republican ticket. When you talk about how Kentucky votes for national politics, they're like, I'm going to solidly, by 26%, choose the Republican ticket. And then at the same time, supposedly these people vote for the exact opposite of everything they stand for when it comes to the governor's position. Does anybody else find that really hard to swallow? Doesn't seem to make any sense to me. You're going to vote nationally and for all the down ballot Republican, but then Democrat for governor. I just thought I'd put that out there because that just doesn't make any sense. Well, let's look at some of the comparison between the numbers Andy got the first time and the second time. In 2019, Andy Beshear received 709,890 votes. However, in 2023, instead of after 4 years of his policies getting more, he actually got less. This year, he got 693,441, which means he had more than 16,000 less votes than he did last time. Do you realize Matt Bevin, when he ran against him that last time, he got more than 704,000 votes, which means if Matt Bevin had been running this time, he would have won. He would have beat both Cameron and Beshear. He got more votes than both of them did this time. I think a lot of this comes down to the money. This is another thing the Republicans need to learn. You are not going to win these things just based on having the most voter registrations. It's a matter of the money. Andy Beshear's campaign spent $17 million in this campaign. Now, contrast that to Daniel Cameron's campaign, and the Republican Party of Kentucky spent a whopping $4 million on this. Doesn't sound like they were overly excited or invested. You have the Democrat, Amy Beshear, spending 400, little more than 400% as much as Daniel Cameron did. Now, this leads us to our next big, huge, massive topic, and it's something I plead with the Republican Party that they need to do something about in this coming years, and that is election reform. Because right now, we have a governor who was given an hour free airtime for a year and a half, who has had 3.5 years in office to push his agenda, who has spent more than 400% more money, and he only wins with 19% of Kentuckians voting for him. What would have happened if Daniel Cameron would have spent equal money as Andy Beshear? You know what would have happened? I'll tell you exactly what would have happened. We would have had Daniel Cameron as the next governor. And so what needs to happen in election reform is there needs to be a cap on the amount of money the campaigns can spend. Now, this should be scaled according to the position that is being run for. You wouldn't want the governor to have the same cap as, say, a mayor of a local race. That wouldn't be appropriate, but it should be scaled and have a thing in there to slide with inflation. But there should be a cap, because right now, whoever has the most money wins the election. And that is not giving us good statesmen. That's giving us people saying, hey, whoever gives me the most money, I'm indebted to you. You're going to get your way. It's enabling special interests. And if the Republicans want to start winning these races, they better implement some election reform. And it should include some other things, too, because right now it all favors whoever the incumbent is, because they can raise money the entire time. One of the other things they should do is they should change our election cycle. Right now, under Kentucky law, we have elections 3 out of 4 years. Now, that leads to voter fatigue. As soon as literally this election is done, you've got the next election, and somebody else is sending you stuff, wanting to put your sign in your yard and mailing you things and asking for your contribution and your vote. If Kentucky were to move one of its election cycles over 1 year, that way we would only have elections every other year. This would have 2 major benefits. Number one, it would increase voter participation because we wouldn't have election fatigue. Number 2, it is going to save the state of Kentucky tens of millions of dollars, if not more, because we're decreasing the amount of elections that we have to 2 versus 3. And if you want to find a way to save tens of millions of dollars, you want more people to vote, this is how to do it with election reform. Now, this would require a constitutional amendment, but they put those on the ballot every few years, every other year. I think it would be highly advantageous for the state of Kentucky. So that's a little bit of running the numbers right now. We see Andy Beshear won with 19% of the votes, got less than he did last time. Some of the money differences really making a huge, massive difference. Some important lessons that I hope the Republican Party of Kentucky learns. Well, that's what we have for you this week. So until next week, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point, reminding you that liberty is not a spectator sport.